A judge appointed by Trump in 2020 has officially blocked the release of a report into whether Trump was hoarding classified documents at Mar-a-Lago in between his two presidencies. The judge argues that the special counsel appointed to investigate, Jack Smith, was never constitutionally able to bring forward the case, thus negating the charges entirely. And she argues that it's unfair for the public to be able to see his findings. But the official indictment already contains a lot of evidence that suggests Trump, in fact, was hoarding those documents. This is just another example of the Trump administration finding a loophole to avoid accountability in public. The Daily Beast is reporting that as of this week, a pro Trump judge has granted the president's request to permanently block a report that very well would be damning. The article goes on to say that in a Monday ruling, the judge granted a request by President Trump and two of his former co defendants in the case to prevent the full release of Smith's findings regarding the investigation into Trump's alleged mishandling of sensitive materials at Mar-a-Lago. So you may recall back in 2023 when some photos were released to the public through an indictment that showed boxes on boxes of classified documents stored all over Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. There were these infamous photos of filing boxes stockpiled in a bathroom, as well as pictures of boxes on a gold stage, boxes in back rooms, boxes stored in basements, boxes and papers sprawled all over the place in Mar a Lago. And of course, at this time, Trump was no longer president. And a lot of people thought and hoped that he would never be president again, which unfortunately, as we know, was not the case. But this alleged hoarding of classified materials happened after Trump lost the 2020 election. And while Judge Eileen Cannon has prevented the release of the full investigation into these allegations, we do still have that original indictment that contained a lot of information pertaining to whether this was true. This was filed in the United States District Court of the Southern District of Florida on June 8th, 2023. And let's walk through some of the claims made at that time. The introduction to the indictment reads, Defendant Donald J. Trump was the 45th President of the United States of America. He held office from January 20th, 2017 until January 20th, 2021. As president, Trump had lawful access to the most sensitive classified documents and national defense information gathered and owned by the United States government, including information from the agencies that comprise the United States intelligence community and the United States Department of Defense. Over the course of his presidency, Trump gathered newspapers, press clippings, letters, notes, cards, photographs, official documents, and other materials in cardboard boxes that he kept in the White House. Among the materials Trump stored in his boxes were hundreds of classified documents. Those included information regarding defense and weapons capabilities of both the United States and foreign countries, nuclear programs, potential vulnerabilities of the US and its allies to military attack, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack. The unauthorized disclosure of these classified documents could put at risk the national security of the US, foreign relations, the safety of the US military, and human sources, and the continued viability of sensitive intelligence collections methods. So basically, what this is saying is that as president, Trump had lawful access to all of these classified materials, things that were incredibly important, not just to US national security, but to all of its allies around the world. And once he was no longer president, it was his duty to return those materials. At 12 p.m. on January 20th, 2021, Trump ceased to be president. As he departed the White House, Trump caused scores of boxes, many of which contained classified documents, to be transported to the Mar-a-Lago Club in Palm Beach, Florida, where he maintained his residence. Trump was not authorized to possess or retain those classified documents. The Mar-a-Lago Club was an active social club which between January 2021 and August 2022 hosted events for tens of thousands of members and guests. After Trump's presidency, the Mar-a-Lago Club was not an authorized location for the storage, possession, review, display, or discussion of classified documents. Nevertheless, Trump stored his boxes containing classified documents in various locations at the Mar-a-Lago Club, including in a ballroom, a bathroom, a shower, an office space, his bedroom, and a storage room. And on two occasions in 2021, Trump couldn't help himself. I'm editorializing here, but Trump showed classified documents to others as follows. In July 2021, at Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, during an audio recorded meeting with a writer, a publisher, and two members of his staff, none of whom possessed security clearance, Trump showed and described a quote plan of attack that Trump said was prepared for him by the Department of Defense and a senior military official. Trump told the individuals that the plan was highly confidential and secret. Trump also said, as president, I could have declassified it, and now I can't, but this is still a secret. Then in August or September 2021, again at the Bedminster Club, Trump showed a representative of his political action committee who did not possess a security clearance a classified map related to a military operation and told the representative that he should not be showing it to the representative and that the representative should not get too close. Again, I'm editorializing here, but you can just imagine Trump saying this. You can hear it in his voice. This is exactly how he tends to talk about things. He loves to say things like, I shouldn't be showing this to you, but I'm going to show it to you anyways. Like it's such a classic vocal phrase for him. Then, on March 30th, 2022, the FBI opened a criminal investigation into the unlawful retention of said classified documents at the Mar-a-Lago Club. A federal grand jury investigation began the next month. The grand jury issued a subpoena requiring Trump to turn over all documents with classification markings. Trump endeavored to obstruct the FBI and grand jury investigations and conceal his continued retention of classified documents by, among other things, a, suggesting that his attorney falsely represent to the FBI and grand jury that he did not have the documents. B, directing a fellow defendant to move boxes of documents to conceal them from his own attorney, the FBI, and the grand jury. C, suggesting that his attorney hide or destroy documents called for by the grand jury subpoena. D, providing some of those documents to the FBI and grand jury while claiming he was cooperating fully. And E, causing a certification to be submitted to the FBI and grand jury, falsely representing that all documents called for had been produced, while knowing that, in fact, not all such documents had been produced. So basically, what this is outlining here with evidence is that Trump knowingly stored these classified documents in private residences after the time he was no longer president, that he bragged about them and showed them to others while fully knowing what he was doing, and that when he got caught, he took great steps to try to cover it up. So then, as a result of Trump's retention of classified documents and his refusal to return them, hundreds of classified documents were not recovered by the US government until 2022 as follows. On January 17th, nearly 1 year after Trump left office, and after months of demands by the National Archives and Records Administration for Trump to provide all missing presidential records, Trump provided only 15 boxes, which contained 197 documents with classification markings. On June 3rd, in response to a grand jury subpoena demanding the production of all documents with classification markings, Trump's attorney provided to the FBI 38 more documents with classification markings. On August 8th, pursuant to a court-authorized search warrant, the FBI recovered from Trump's office and a storage room at the Mar-a-Lago Club 102 more documents with classification markings. So again, this is no longer in the territory of what is simply alleged that Trump did. We know for a fact that the FBI had to conduct a search warrant in order to obtain more documents after those documents were already subpoenaed and Trump and then his attorney only returned some of the documents. We know he took the documents after he was president. We know he held on to the documents even after the court demanded he turn them over. And we know that he obstructed the retrieval of these documents through multiple avenues. This document goes on to describe Trump's co-conspirator who served as his personal aide or body man. It goes on to describe the Mar-a-Lago Club, the types of classified information that was in these documents, which included documents related to the CIA, the DoD, Department of Defense, the National Security Agency, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the National Reconnaissance Office, the Department of Energy, the Department of State, and the Bureau of Intelligence and Research. And just for good measure, it includes some of Trump's public statements about classified information that he had made as a candidate in 2016. He said back then, in my administration, I'm going to enforce all laws concerning the protection of classified information. No one will be above the law. Then later, he said, we also need to fight this battle by collecting intelligence and then protecting our classified secrets. We can't have someone in the Oval Office who doesn't understand the meaning of the word confidential or classified. He said, one of the first things we must do is to enforce all classification rules and to enforce all laws relating to the handling of classified information. He said, we need the best protection of classified information. Service members here in North Carolina have risked their lives to acquire classified intelligence to protect our country. And then in 2018, once he was already elected president, Trump said, as the head of the executive branch and commander in chief, I have a unique constitutional responsibility to protect the nation's classified information, including by controlling access to it. He continued on to say, more broadly, the issue of security clearance raises larger questions about the practice of former officials maintaining access to our nation's most sensitive secrets long after their time in government has ended. Such access is particularly inappropriate when former officials have transitioned into highly partisan positions and seek to use real or perceived access to sensitive information to validate their political attacks. Any access granted to our nation's secrets should be in furtherance of national, not personal interests. Now, everything that Trump said about classified documents and maintaining their security and not keeping them after you're no longer in office, all of that was true and correct. It's just that a couple of years later, he went on to do all of these things that he had previously condemned and said he would fight against. And notably, this wasn't the only charge that the United States government was investigating against Donald Trump. At the exact same time, Special Counsel Jack Smith was investigating allegations that Trump had committed conspiracy to defraud the United States by lying about the 2020 election, claiming that it was stolen from him, and then continuing to push those election fraud conspiracy theories, which have been repeatedly disproven up until this day. He's still claiming that the 2020 election was stolen. And at the exact same time that Trump is making all of these false claims and that we have all of this evidence that he did all of these things, at the exact same time, you have members of his administration today claiming that there is no chance this man had anything to do with the Epstein case, which is just a funny little thing to juxtapose, considering that the FBI previously found he was not a very credible source when returning classified documents over to them and proceedings around reclaiming those classified documents. We know that Trump has lied. We know that Trump has said what he needs to do and then flagrantly gone against things that he previously said just a couple of years prior. We know that he's not a credible source, but he's stacked his administration, the entire enforcement arm of the federal government, with his own personal allies so that he can't be held accountable for all of these things that he's already done. And that's what's going on with this judge, Eileen Cannon, who Trump put in her position in the years preceding all of these things that he allegedly did. How convenient, right? Well, Judge Eileen Cannon didn't just block the full report into these classified documents from being released to the public. The Daily Beast reports she also threw out the entire case where Trump was accused of 40 felony counts. And her rationale for doing that was saying that Smith was unlawfully appointed to his position by then Attorney General Merrick Garland because his appointment was not first approved by the Senate. Interestingly enough, Trump does stuff like this all the time. One of the first things that comes to mind for me here is Trump giving Elon Musk, an unelected person who is not an official in the United States of America, the ability to unilaterally slash funding for anything he deemed appropriate. There was no election putting Elon Musk in that position. There was no Senate approval or congressional approval that Elon Musk could take those actions, but he did it anyways. It's just Now that Trump faces all of these felony charges with tons of evidence that's already publicly shared, now Trump is referring to these loopholes, and his allies in the court system are referring to these loopholes so that they can just throw out the entire case and block more of that evidence from becoming public. It sounds very familiar. It sounds like what we've seen the federal government do with regards to the Epstein files, with regards to other forms of federal corruption, and all types of activities that Trump has been up to during his first term, his second term, and in between those terms when he had no approval whatsoever. The Daily Beast reports that that decision from Cannon means neither Attorney General Pam Bondi nor her successor can ever attempt to release Smith's final report. She said that while other special counsels have released final reports at the conclusion of their work, they did so after charges were dropped or after a defendant pleaded guilty or was found guilty at trial. Quote from Judge Cannon: "The court strains to find a situation in which a former special counsel has released a report after initiating criminal charges that did not result in a finding of guilt, at least not in a situation like this one, where the defendants contested the charges from the outset and still proclaimed their innocence." Well, the one thing that I can agree with Judge Cannon on is that there hasn't been a situation quite like this before. Rarely, if ever, have we had a situation where the President of the United States not only flagrantly violates the law, but then stacks the court with corrupt individuals of his choosing to shield him from accountability. And rarely has the American public decided to put such a criminal back in office. But here we are. The hypocrisy is outstanding, but you have to remember, for people like Trump, the hypocrisy is the point. Trump's ideology is that he should get to do things that other people don't get to do. So if he's behaving in a hypocritical manner, that's just an testament to how he feels he is superior to other people. He feels like a mad king, and the rest of the country is allowing him to behave that way, at least for now. To this day, Trump continues to claim that the 2020 election was stolen, and he's even using that as the pretense to encroach on state elections through federal means. Not only that, but Trump has spent the last several years insulting Special Counsel Jack Smith and decrying the results of this investigation into him. Results that now, because of a judge he appointed, we will never get to see. So the American people are being kept in the dark while we have this president at the wheel who we can't trust and will clearly say or do anything to protect himself from the consequences of his own actions. Judge Cannon says that releasing this final report would be unfair. But what's really unfair is that Trump has managed to avoid accountability yet again by ensuring that the entire system of accountability is stacked in his favor. And that's not justice, it's the definition of injustice.